Hi Anna, thank you very much for agreeing to do this interview with me today. This is a kind of new thing that I've decided to do for the blog. As you're aware, I write a blog each week and I've been doing some book reviews and I've done an interview myself talking about motivation interviewing, and now I've wanted to add some blogs from other professionals who are familiar with the approach and kind of hear a little bit about their thoughts on it. First of all, could you just tell the listeners what your role is?
Yeah, so my job title is Restorative Practice Development Advisor, and I work for Devon County Council within the Social Work Academy, so all focused on workforce development within children's services. And as much as my job title says restorative practice, a key part of my job is around coordinating a training program which includes motivational interviewing and embedding that into practice. And my background is as a qualified social worker and also a qualified play therapist.
Excellent, lovely. Thanks, Anna. And I'm aware that you have been on the motivation interviewing training with myself, and you also were involved in the project in Islington some years ago.
Yeah, that's right. So your 3-day training. And then in Islington, testing on the year there, I want to say it was around maybe 2016, thereabouts, and that was a 4-day training and involved a bit of extra coaching within that.
Excellent. Okay, so you've got some familiarity with the approach, and what I'm wondering is, what do you think of it? What do you think of motivational interviewing?
I mean, I love it. I could give you a short answer or a long answer. I love it. I mean, the reason why I love it is because it's person-centred, and that really aligns with my play therapy training. I love that it's grounded in that respect for people, respect for humankind, and being led by somebody else in terms of that person-centred. But the thing that I also really like about it is that it has some focus. It has some guidance within that. And as much, and that's where it really brings together my two professional hats in that respect, because I really enjoyed the play therapy side of things. I really enjoyed being there in that moment with someone. I mean, that's with children, but just that therapeutic relationship I really enjoyed. But the social worker within me also really wanted to be involved. I wanted to be doing the doing bit, being involved in the systems, being involved in what needs to change and how to get there, being more active. And I think what I really like about motivational interviewing is it brings the two together. I mean, I don't like telling people what to do. It doesn't sit comfortably with me. I've been proven wrong too many times when I've told someone what to do. And also, I don't like other people telling me what to do. It brings out my inner adolescent. It just comes right out. So I like that. In some ways, it's freeing not to have that responsibility. You know, you're not the expert. You know where you stand. So I really like how in Devon we're bringing motivational interviewing together with restorative practice, which is different from how when I was in Islington and we had motivational interviewing there. I really like that it's coming together with restorative practice, because I think the two go together really well. And I think the value base of restorative practice really aligns with that spirit and ethos of motivational interviewing. And motivational interviewing really brings some nuts and bolts as well to how you can really live that value base. So I really like how the two go together in this current role.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is this kind of fits with who you are. So there's something about when you were doing the play therapy work, you were really in tune with that young person and kind of sitting in their space, and you really value that, and you talk there about the respect for the other person and their expertise. And then it sounds like what motivational interviewing adds to that is that kind of element of guidance. And then you're kind of adding to that further by saying that the way that works for you is you can draw on the person's expertise. You don't like telling people what to do or being told what to do yourself, and I would echo the same, and I certainly can be that rebellious teenager. And I think sometimes people get into that practice, the more specialised people become, then they feel they've got all the answers and they feel they've got to go in and do too, rather than draw out. So it sounds like this approach really fits with you, and hand in hand with the restorative approach as well. How relevant do you think it is in the field of social care? How much of a fit is there?
I mean, I think there's a really good fit, because ultimately, and I can only really talk in terms of children's services. I don't have much experience with adults, but what I would say is, from my experience as a social worker, it's all around behaviour change, and that's where motivational interviewing sits. We're typically, not always, but typically working with children and families where there is a concern or a worry, and something needs to change. And so that's how I see motivational aligning so well. And the other bit that I quite like about motivational interviewing, and it's a bit that I'd like to kind of develop my understanding a bit more of, is it provides, because of some of the strategies within it, if you can call it that, it's quite measurable in lots of ways. Yes, you can't always measure what matters, but actually it does increase that opportunity. And I guess some of the things that I really like is how motivational interviewing can be adapted within the children's social care setting. So in a previous local authority where there was motivational interviewing, we were thinking a lot about the OARs, open questions, affirmations, reflections and summaries, in how we're in kind of a coaching session. Uh-huh. We also kind of looked at, is there a clarity of concerns? Are we being child-centred? Bringing that within, so those conversations are being brought back to the child. So you're using motivational interviewing and keeping it on focus into the remit that it's in. Because ultimately, in children's social work, that is our focus. Our focus is on the child.
Yes.
And I guess something when I was thinking, is there any way that it's not relevant with social care? I mean, what are the challenges of applying motivational interviewing within children's social care? And I guess the only thing that I sometimes try and hold in mind, and this is applicable with so many approaches in how we're working in this field, is there are times you have to be tentative and thinking about trauma, or thinking about times where a person may be just overwhelmed, and actually there's that need to regulate and reconnect before thinking about anything else. But I think that person-centered nature of motivational interviewing means that isn't a conflict. It's just a consideration you need to hold in mind.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. You're saying that being client-centred is crucial, and that's at the core of this approach. And the motivation interviewing fits across the board in social care. And you're also saying there would be some times where we're working with people who've experienced trauma, or have had experiences where they're in such a difficult space that actually it would be the spirit of MI that would be the most important, actually sitting with and tuning in, rather than moving towards kind of drawing out change talk or using some of those change talk skills. What you're saying is, for some people, we need to simply be and help them to regulate where they're at before we move into any of the, I guess, the fancier skills or the more guiding skills. And I guess motivation interviewing gives you that flexibility.
Yeah, what I would really say, thinking about its placing within social care, is we need to take ownership as practitioners and as a service to give it space to flourish. Motivational interviewing will only flourish if we give it the space to do that. We have very stringent processes and very tight timescales. Now, that's not to say that there's no space for motivational interviewing. And I always hold on to that story that you talked about in your training about, I don't know if it was a research paper or what, but where a nurse was walking with a client just from a ward to a rehab ward, and just that 10-minute walk of utilising motivational interviewing can have a significant impact on outcomes. Yeah. And I always try and hold on to those those kind of moments that actually you don't need huge amounts of time. You can have just a short focused conversation where you're really honing in on using some of that motivational interviewing, and that's where we can see that impact. But we have to hold on to that space to allow that.
I heard somebody speaking, a trauma-informed practitioner recently, and they said that every interaction is an intervention, and that fits with what you're saying there. If we've only got 10 minutes with somebody, can we actually make a difference? we may not affect change, but we can certainly engage. I think sometimes when people are limited with time, they feel that they've got to make change in that kind of small window. And I think it can be far more effective if we simply be and engage with the person. So it seems that fits with social care. And as you say, you've got certain things that need to be done within a certain time, but that doesn't mean that you can't use the restorative approach and the motivation interviewing approach within that work. You've received training yourself in two different counties. Would you recommend that practitioners receive training in motivation interviewing?
I mean, definitely, for so many reasons. On the first, it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable, and actually, we learn more when we're enjoying ourselves. And one of the reasons it's enjoyable is because it's relevant. And speaking from your training, your stories really bring it alive, and that for me has really helped me kind of hold on to key concepts. I think also, I'm fortunate to have had the opportunity twice to have quite, robust training, and I would always take more opportunity because you need to practice. I might have had that opportunity, but I'm no means an expert, and everyone is always learning. And I think the other thing that I really like about motivation interviewing training is it's a real pick up and use training, and I've seen that. I've been fortunate enough to see that from there being a 2-day training together, a break, and then a third day. You can hear practitioners using the training in that intervening time and hear that feedback in that third day. So it is a real pick up and use, and it's the training gives you confidence to use some of the tools, and it's not just so much about the tools. I'm thinking about scaling questions. It's less about the scaling question. It's not the number. It's more that conversation. But it gives you that confidence to do that. So I think I would recommend training. I love it.
It's really validating to hear you say that. My experience of working with groups with that kind of 2 days and then the break for practice on the third day and observing their skills, and when most people turn up not wanting to do skills practice, and we kind of ease our way in with stories and a bit of laughter and a bit of fun, as you say. And then in no time people are practicing the skills, and I get an opportunity to see that play out and give feedback, and it seems that people are taking that on board in Devon, and that's so encouraging for me. I think it's really important we're not just ticking a box in professional development when we give people training, but we're actually providing some skills and some ways of being that practitioners can pick up and apply to the work that they're doing. What would you say?
I guess something I would just say around training that I think is really important for organisations putting on training is it's really vital that you top and tail training. So what is the climate in which that training can be utilised? Because like you say, it's not, you can't expect someone to go to a training course and absorb everything. There needs to be some of that preparation work, and there needs to be that space afterwards of bringing that into practice.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, and the evidence that's coming out now is people need that kind of coaching and booster training afterwards to really embed the specific skills in practice. In your opinion, what can the impact be of kind of motivation interviewing county-wide? What kind of impact would you envisage?
I think it can have an impact on the culture of that county. If everyone is experiencing a level of training, it develops more of a shared language base. So it's more, you hear it more, you see it more, so it develops a lot more confidence. It creates that ethos and that belief that people can change, and that creates the climate where people can learn from one another. The first time I ever did training, I remember the bit that really resonated with me was thinking about affirmation, and I hadn't really thought about that in such a way. It really echoes within play therapy. You talk a lot about prizing as opposed to praising, because you're talking less about the act activity or the outcome. It's more about the approach to that activity or outcome. So it's more based on the person's approach as opposed to kind of a product. Not, you know, it's not simply good, bad.
Yes.
But where you have meaningful affirmation. And that really resonates as well in terms of the culture side of things, because you're seeing more and more things like appreciative inquiries being used, and actually just that concept of appreciation, affirmation, and the impacts that has on a culture. I mean, that's not the only part of motivational interviewing I see as impacting a culture, but I think that's a really key one that isn't perhaps talked about as much as it could. What I do think in terms of training county-wide, there's something for me as well that it's not just about the breadth of the training, it's about some of the training having focus. So I've been thinking a lot more about the application of motivational interviewing within different roles, and I do wonder whether there's something that there's a conversation worth having around how we consider motivational interviewing across the hierarchy, so it permeates and role models throughout. So I think when you go on the training, as a practitioner, you can really see its relevance within practice. And I'm wondering whether there's something that can be had when we're thinking about county-wide, when we're thinking about a whole organisation. Is there a way to be specialised, to hone in on the value of this within a leadership role? I'm not just talking leadership as in those at the top of the hierarchy, but anyone with that leadership role, because although you definitely get that from the training, it's I'm owning this for myself, it's a harder jump to make in how you utilise some of these skills within different remits of your role. And I think there's some real opportunities there, and actually how can motivational interviewing really be influencing some of how our leaders approach work, approach how they're working with their peers, with those that they supervise.
That makes so much sense to me. I mean, if you look at the kind of origins of motivational interviewing and how it was applied in practice, working in substance misuse and healthcare settings, what you're saying is you can see that application, and that's obvious and very obvious on the training. But when you're thinking about the impact county-wide, you're also considering how do we kind of create a motivational interviewing culture? How do we have that kind of rippling and permeating throughout our staff teams and organisation?
Yeah, that belief in change and that belief in that person in front of you, that they can get to where they need to get, and that you're part of that process. Yeah. I think that transcends a specific part of the process, a specific part of the system or the organisation, and it can be a culture and an ethos.
Yeah, we don't just want to take that thought and value and way of being into our work with families. We want to believe in each other, and we want to be appreciating and affirming each other in the workplace, as well as the work that we're doing as practitioners. Thank you for considering the application of this approach. It's great hearing your experience of it and your thoughts on it. And I'm going to be doing a series of interviews with a number of people in a number of different places and just hearing people's thoughts. And it seems to me that this really fits with you as a person and as a practitioner. And you also have hopes that can kind of ripple out into a cultural organisation way of being as well.
You've got to dream big.
Thank you very much for your time, Anna. It's been really good talking with you, and good luck with everything that you're doing at the moment. I know that you're really busy in Devon, so thank you for giving me your time.